Hello friends, and welcome back to another bookish bakish video. Today is actually going to be an update on my challenge, my blind date with a book and blind date with a bake challenge I started at the beginning of this year. So if you don't know, my idea was to pick a random book. It's been a bunch of books that have been wrapped up for me, which has been very helpful. And so I get to pick a random book that's been wrapped up by my partner, and I have to read that in the month. And then I also pick a random bake out of Melissa Forte's baking book. To be honest, it's been 6 months and I've been loving this challenge so much. I feel like it's a little bit easier to, one, pick a book that I normally wouldn't read and then just jump right in. But regarding the baking, I've really been loving learning the new techniques from Melissa Forte's, and it's been so great to just get back into baking, and it's been a while and I've just been really loving it. So those of you who have been joining me on these challenge videos, I really appreciate it. It means the world to me because this isn't just about me enjoying my YouTube stuff, but this is also me trying to encourage myself to read new books and also bake again, because it's been a while since I've been baking regularly and I just love it so much. So thank you so much for joining me. Those of you who have been liking these challenge videos, I really appreciate it. But let's get started. You guys are here to figure out how my blind date with a book, blind date with a bake, and blind date with a book went. So let's go ahead and have a rewind so you remember what kind of happened last month. What we're baking this month. Maybe right here? No, I think right here. So this is a honey and prosciutto liqueur cake. So let's go ahead and, I think I need this book. It's a bit of a fatter book. Do I want to read a fat book this month? Let's read a fat book this month. So we're going to be reading this one. Ooh, okay. This is going to be intriguing. The dead take the A train. This is a horror book, so this is going to be really an interesting month. So as you saw, I was supposed to be reading The Dead Take the A Train by Cassandra Khaw and Richard Kadrey. I must say, this is probably only the second book I've read that's been written by two authors, and it's quite fascinating. Before we get too far into this book, I just wanted to have a quick little reminder. The first half of this video, I'm going to go ahead and, actually, the first little piece of this video, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the bake, and then we're going to talk about the book with no spoilers, so if you want to read it, then this is kind of the time for you to kind of learn about the book and see if this might be a book that you might be interested in reading. And then the last part of this video is going to be me talking about all the spoilers, everything that's happened, because I actually think I might have quite a bit to say about this novel, which is quite interesting. So that's kind of the idea of this. However, if you want to see what book and bake I'll be doing for next month in July, make sure you jump down into the chapters below if you don't want to hear the spoilers, and jump to the very end so you know what we're going to be doing next month. Just as a little idea. So I want to first talk about the bake. So I was planning to bake a very beautiful cake that I was unable to pronounce in the last video, which, to give me a little leeway, the alcohol is in Italian, so I was struggling at pronouncing it, but I'll explain in a second. So I was supposed to be baking this beautiful cake right here, and it's a very scented, very strong smelling cake that is honey, and what the alcohol is called is a prosciutto. And prosciutto is a liquor from a specific vineyard, and they go ahead and make this liquor out of the peach leaves. And I'm going to be 100% honest, I did not get this liquor. I really wanted to. I was going to order it, but we can only order it in Italy. And I have a friend who lives in Italy, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I can send it to her and then we can get it to us. But it was going to be a really big adventure for this alcohol. So we ended up making a slight change to the recipe, a slight alteration. However, it's still peach, and that was the biggest thing. So I ended up picking up a different alcohol, which is also still a peach liquor. And also, how cute is this bottle? And this is a peach liquor. It's not made out of the peach leaves, It is quite sweet, and so I was thinking maybe it would work. The hard thing is I have no idea how this other liquor tastes. So we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants, but I had to kind of make alterations. I kind of had to do with what I had. And so we ended up buying this liquor. It's very peachy and it's actually quite delicious. So I'm looking forward to having a few fun little cocktails. One of the great things about this liquor though is we found out when we bought this bottle that some of the money from the purchase actually gets donated to some cats and cat homes. So it may not be the correct liquor, but I'm still very happy with it, and I'm happy with the outcome as well. So I think it was okay. However, I must say, I just still need to get the liquor because I'm gonna have to try this cake with the actual true stuff to see how the flavor actually changes. Before we get too far into the flavor of this cake though, let's go ahead and have a little montage of the bake so you can see how it went. And also, I'll read you the synopsis of this story so you know what kind of story we're getting into. Julie Cruz is a cocked up, burnt out 30-something who packs a lot of magic into her small body. She's been trying to establish herself in New York City's magic scene, and she'll work the most gruesome gigs to claw her way to the top. Julie is desperate for a quick career boost to break the dead-end grind, but her pleas draw the attention of an eldritch god who is hungry for revenge. Her power grab sets off a deadly chain of events that puts her closest friends and the entire world directly in the path of annihilation. The first explosive adventure in the Karen City duology, The Dead Take the A Train, fuses cosmic horror and Kadrey's gritty fantasy into a full-throttle thrill ride straight into New York's magic underbelly. I thought I would switch it up a little bit and introduce the authors this time instead of reading quotes in the book. So here's a little bit more about the authors. USA Today best-selling author Cassandra Khaw is an award-winning game writer whose short fiction can be found in places like FNSF, Tor.com, and Yours, Beast Fantasy and Science Fiction. Their novella, Nothing But Blackened Teeth, was a Bram Stoker World Fantasy, Shirley Jackson, and British Fantasy Award finalist. Cassandra lives in New York with two extraordinary large cats. They can be found on Twitter, mostly. Richard Kadrey is a New York Times bestseller author whose work has been nominated for both the Locus and BSFA awards. His novel, Sandman Slim, was included in Amazon's 100 science fictions and fantasy books to read in a lifetime. Some of Kadrey's other books include King's Bullet, The Everything Box, The Grand Dark, and Butcher's Bird. He also writes for film, games, and comics such as Heavy Metal, Lucifer, and Hellblazer. To let you know, this cake is absolutely amazing. It is so delicious. I'm gobsmacked, truly. I was making the cake last night, so that's why the video is a little bit darker as well. But I was making this cake last night and I was thinking, man, this has I added a little bit of almond extract too because the liquor online is explained to have a very peachy flavor, but also a little bit of almondy flavor. And the thing is about a peach liquor that we have, it's just peach. So I added a teeny tiny bit of almond extract to add that little bit of almond into the cake. But you have not just the almond extract and the peach liquor, but you also have orange zest, and then you also have a little bit of vanilla extract. So there's just a lot of aromas going on. So there's a lot of smells going on in this cake, and I was a little nervous. And then you also have honey in it. So we have honey, orange zest, almond extract, vanilla extract, peach liquor. There's just so many smells. And when I poured it all into the cake pan last night, I was like, wow, this cake smells so intense. It wasn't a bad smell though. It was just very florally, if that makes sense. And it was baking and it was smelling nice. And then we got this beautiful crust on the bottom of the cake, which I was really, really happy to see. And this is kind of the honey caramelizing, which I must say I picked the perfect honey for this recipe because the honey is actually located in the woods. So these bees are located in the Black Forest, and this is specifically Black Forest honey. And so it tastes very earthy, if that makes sense. So you have just a lot of earthy flavors and earthy, flowery, florally smells. And I baked it, and I was like, ooh, this cake may be a little bit too perfumey for me. And I'm not gonna lie, I've already eaten half the cake. I made it last night, and me and my partner have already eaten half of it. And it's not because we're like, ooh, we have to eat it because it's hot outside. We're eating it because it's so, so gosh darn delicious. And I must say, this is the most perfect cake for this season. So I don't know what it is, my magic powers, but every time, I'm probably gonna jinx myself now, but when I have to pick a recipe out of this book, I feel like I'm getting the recipes that fit for the season. And we just had strawberry season last month, and I made a raspberry tart, and we're having a ton of peaches right now. And so this peach cake just fit perfectly, and this is like my happy birthday cake. This is a cake that I'm like, I couldn't have asked for a better birthday cake. It's so delicious, so perfect, so tasty, so aromatic, but it's not like overwhelming in the flavors. It's actually quite light. And so we also made a sugar syrup. So you make a sugar syrup out of sugar and water, and then you add just a little bit of the peach liqueur to add a little bit of that flavor in there. And it's not too intense, it's not too crazy, and it's really just, oh. And I'm kind of sad I didn't get the correct liquor, but I'm really happy that this one ended up working out so well. And that it tastes so nice with this cake too. I don't feel like it ruined this cake. I feel, if anything, it's just as good as, hopefully, Melissa Forti's original recipe. Again, I'm gonna have to try it with the real liquor, but for now, this is a great substitute. I'm really happy with this cake. It's perfect, it's delicious, and it's a perfect birthday cake for me. And also challenge cake. And it's so, so moist and so fluffy. I'm shocked with how beautifully aerated, and I'm happy. So again, if you have not tried any recipes from Melissa Forti's, I'm gonna keep recommending this baking book because holy moly, it's brilliant. So let me take one more bite and then we can go ahead and start with our book. All right, let's talk about The Dead Take the A Train by Cassandra Khaw and Richard Kadrey. If you don't know, this is a horror novel. I actually received this in an Abominable book box I ordered from the Abominable Book Club in the UK. And I'm not necessarily a horror book reader, and this is not necessarily, I would say, a cozy book. So step away from the cozy stuff. I mean, Melissa Forti's is super cozy, the cake is super cozy. This is not cozy. This is definitely not cozy. But the idea of this challenge is to branch out a little bit in the genres I normally read and to pick up some books that I may keep putting off. And this was a really great pick. Honestly, it may not be generally a June type of read, but I didn't feel like it was specific in the type of season, so I was happy reading this at any time. The writing was really interesting. I've never read anything from Cassandra Khaw or Richard Kadrey. I really hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly. But I do know that they're both horror writers or horror authors, and so it's quite fascinating to get a book that is written by two authors in this genre and seeing what is kind of come out of it. And I'm always curious, what does it mean that two authors wrote the book? Are they going chapter to chapter? Are they going line to line? Are they just kind of sharing ideas? I'm so curious as to how that works. But I'm really, really happy with how this turned out. It is not a book for everybody. That's very, very for sure. I think if you're not somebody who can handle gore, horror, and very gross scenes, this is not going to be a book for you. I found the scenes gross, but they weren't so nasty that I couldn't read them, which I really appreciated. Like, they were enough nasty where I felt gross, and I was like, ooh. Like, you see a B movie and there's blood splatter. That's the kind of gross I felt in this book, where it was like nasty, but I didn't feel that they were writing pieces that made me feel disgusting and ill while I was reading them. And if you read this and you read the pieces I'm talking about, please don't judge me. I grew up watching a ton of horror movies with my dad, and I watch a ton of B movies. So these are the types of, like, I love horror B movies, and I used to watch a ton of horror movies when I was younger. So it's not a crazy genre for me. I love being cozy. I love being cute. I mean, I'm wearing a black outfit to kind of match with the theme of this book, but I have my bee earrings because we gotta be cute. And I have my beautiful flowers. So I'm a mix of both, and we can be a mix of both in this world. Like, we could be a mix of a lot of things. We can have our beautiful gothic side, and we can have our beautiful cozy side. We're all welcome here. So back to this book. I think it was really well written. I must say the first like 2 chapters were quite confusing. We kind of jump into an action scene and we don't know anybody, we don't know anything, and we have a lot going on, and I was like, I am so lost. And I felt like if the entire book was going to be like this, there was no way I was going to get through it. So I read the first 2 chapters, and then finally the 3rd chapter came through. I was like, okay, now we're being introduced to characters. Now we're trying to figure out what's happening. Now we're actually understanding who Julie, our main character, is, and who we've been following for the first couple pages. So before I get too far, let me tell you a little bit about the story. So we follow our main character, Julie, and she is kind of like a hired bounty hunter, but for monsters in New York. And there's a magic system in kind of like underground New York. It's like almost like the grunge scene, but for magic and monsters. And so we have only a few, we don't actually know how many, but we do understand that the middle class doesn't know anything about magic or the magic system, but we do know that extremely wealthy, like the people in Wall Street, and the people who are in this kind of grunge scene, this magic scene, know about the magic system. And so we are based in New York, and I love that. I love the fact that we have like a New York scene. I haven't been yet. I'm going, I promise, at some point. But I love the fact that we have like this New York scene, this grunge scene. Coming from Seattle, I know this grunge scene very well. I love the grunge scene. And so I was able to kind of pop into like when I used to go to like the underground music festivals, and it was really fun. And so I kind of felt like I was jumping into that kind of scene again. And we follow Julie, and she is a bounty hunter, a hireable bounty hunter that can go and destroy some of these monsters that are bad. Not all monsters are bad. There are some good monsters that we find out, but there are some very, very bad monsters that should not be in existence and do a lot of bad, terrible things and should not be alive. So we have Julie, who goes out and destroys these monsters, and she is somebody who has magical powers. So it's talked about like her having barbed wire tattooed into her arm, I believe, by how it's described. And that barbed wire is actually something that she can pull out, which is crazy. I must admit, sorry, I should have done a content warning. There are some very gruesome descriptions. I probably will not go into the gruesome stuff. That was probably the most gruesome I'll get, so I do apologize if that weirded you out, but I just wanted to give a little content warning before I get much further. If you're not somebody into gore or horror, this may just not be a challenge for you, but I do highly recommend you skip to the end so that way you can see what book and bake we're going to be doing next month. But if you do want to stick around, I would really appreciate it because this book is quite interesting. And maybe you want to pick up a new genre. So we follow Julie, and she has magic in her arm, or magic. She does magic. She can do spells. She can read spell books, and things happen. We start to learn about this world as we're reading the book, which is kind of the way I prefer it. I hate when you're being explained the entire world at the very beginning, and you spend the first like 6 chapters just information dump. And this one, we kind of learn it through a different way. We learn it as the book is going on, which I really liked. And we learn it also while Sarah learns it. So Sarah is a really old friend of Julie who ends up coming to her, who needs a little bit of help, and she's just visiting. We're learning that she's visiting. And so Sarah is visiting Julie. They haven't seen each other in years, and Sarah doesn't actually know anything about Julie's world. So as Sarah's learning it, we're also learning it, which I think worked out really well. I think that balance of like, hey, Julie has to explain some things to Sarah, and that's how we are learning about these things. But it wasn't like, you know how in some films you get like, I forget how they call it, but like the main character has to explain the like basic things that are happening so the audience can also be part of the story. For example, let's say you have two characters, Joe and Jamie. Joe is a fisherman who is off to go fish for a monster fish. And Jamie doesn't know anything about what Joe does. So Jamie is like, hey, Joe, what are you doing today? And Joe then goes into a long monologue about what he does for a living. Jamie, I appreciate you asking. I love to build fishing rods and have the thickest line to go out fishing for the biggest monstrous fishes. I have gotten so fish. I don't know why I'm on about fish, but you know what I mean. So it's about like the monologue of explaining the back end of the story. And I was worried that that was what was going to happen here with Sarah, but it's not, and I appreciate it. It's more like you get informational bits about multiple different areas like throughout the time of the story. So that's Sarah. Sarah comes into the story not too far into the book. So Sarah ends up kind of coming in, I think a few chapters in. I have so many tabs, and I was wondering if I put a tab where Sarah came in, but I don't think I did. I think I put a tab in later on. So we have Sarah come in, and then Julie is kind of learning about what happened with Sarah in the last few years, how her life has been, what she's been doing, but Sarah's more interested in what's happening with Julie, and Julie feels very comfortable sharing about her life. We also get to meet some of Julie's friends and the people that have been around her during this magic system and her bounty hunter days. We then also end up meeting an ex from Julie named Tyler, and Tyler works for this very large company that's like a Wall Street company. And they are connected to banking, I think, and they're a bad company. And Tyler and Julie don't have a good relationship. You kind of learn that through the story. And in the kind of gist of the story, Tyler and Julie are almost enemies towards each other, but not necessarily directly all the time, but based on the things that they put into the world, end up causing problems. So there's just a lot happening, and it's sometimes overwhelming with how much was happening, but it was also quite fascinating with how these two authors were able to put in so much information in kind of a short book. I mean, it's 300 and some odd pages long, 380-ish pages long, but you got enough information to know what was happening. You got a lot of monsters, which I love reading about, like creatures and monsters. I love when authors put so many creatures and monsters and descriptions in the books. It just makes me kind of like it makes me kind of jump into another world, which I truly, really love when I read a book. So we have a lot of characters that have actual growth. We have people who are changing, we have creatures, we have gore, we have horror, we have so much happening. And then I actually really enjoyed this book until the end. Until the last like 50 pages, I just lost kind of interest. And then I figured out why I lost interest. I lost interest because this is book one of maybe 2 books. It could be a trilogy. I don't know what's planned, but I do know that this has a sequel, and the sequel's not out yet, and that drives me bonkers. I didn't know that there was going to be a sequel to this book. I should have looked it up, but I didn't. So the last 50 pages was just kind of like a setup to the next part of the book. And there was a big monster in this book, and I felt like the battle scene for the monster was not enough to be in that last 50 pages. Like I loved all of the story build up, the battle build up. I loved all of that, but then I felt like the ending was kind of weak because we were building up for the second novel. So that's my one big complaint. I also think Julie should have more character growth. I think there was parts of her character that I didn't feel like it was growth enough. But I do think she's a very interesting character, and I find her as a very like tough lady, and I just wish we learned a little bit more about like the softer side of her. Like we learned so much about, it's not necessarily a spoiler because we learn it very, very early on. Julie has a thing for Sarah. And all these little yellow tabs in here are like little sweet thoughts that Julie had about Sarah. Like Julie remembering them being young together, or Julie wishing she could just like be around Sarah all the time, like not having a romantic relationship with her, but just wanting to be with her. Like it would be more important for her to have a friendship with her, Sarah, than to be like romantic with her, because she would rather have Sarah just in her life than more. So that was also another thing. I actually love the romance in this book. I'm not a romance reader. Many of you know this, but I loved the romance in this book. It was very cute, and it actually had growth to it. Like there wasn't like Julie saying, "Oh, I love you, Sarah," and Sarah being, "I love you, Julie," and now they're together. It's actually, there's growth to it. There's depth to it. So Julie may not actually have a lot of character growth, I believe, but this romance has a lot of character growth, which I found really fascinating. So, to be honest, very great in the sense of the writing style. I loved the writing style. The first 2 chapters are very confusing. Make sure you just take your time to get into the book. And then all of it is really interesting. It's very fast paced. It's moving until the last 50 pages for me. But I know it's leading up to a sequel. I'm curious about the sequel. I want to read the sequel because I want to know what ends up happening. But I just wish I wish the monster that was presented at the end of the book, there was more there. There needed to be more for me, because I saw all these other battles and this one just fell short. So, yeah. Okay, that's all my non-spoiler information. I'm sorry if I didn't give you a lot of details. There are some major plot points that I think are really interesting. These are where all these blue marks are. And we also have multiple perspectives. So that's also another thing. All these tabs are when we change from female perspectives to male perspectives. Another thing I was marking, so these pink marks are actually horror or gore parts, because I thought they were nasty, and I was like, oh, pink would be perfect for nasty scenes. I ended up starting to mark something else in pink, and this was misogyny. So I started marking these long pink ones as disgusting misogyny and disgusting male thoughts of women, and disgusting, like, let's see if I could find a quote. It's not going to be a spoiler, I promise. It's the way like they would describe women sometimes in the book, and it's part of the book. Like it's not like Cassandra Khaw and Richard Kadrey were describing them because that's what they believe women are. It's the characters in the book describing women. So I just want to make that very clear. I think I actually think I have one more comment after I read this comment or quote. I have a comment about the characters and multiple characters and women and men representation inside the book, but in a second. I'm going to read the quote first. This one's a really good one. This one's like what women are expected to do. This could be her come to Jesus moment. The instant when she finally committed to bettering herself for the species. And wouldn't it be great? No more of that pathological irresponsibility. She might finally get a real job, get married, have kids, become a real person. And when I read that, I felt so gross. And so it earned a pink sticker. A pink sticker meant gross to me. And the fact that some of these lines made me feel gross because of the descriptions they had were really fascinating for me. I felt like that was good writing when they were doing that. Like, you weren't just getting grossed out by the actual, like, gore scenes, but you were getting grossed out by the actual, like, depictions of characters and the misogyny in the book. So I hate these quotes. They're gross, But I love the fact that the authors were able to do something like this. I wasn't just being grossed out by one thing, but it was two things. So that's one thing. The thing I wanted to talk about the characters. I know I was going to say I'm done, but I'm not done. The thing I was going to talk about the characters. So we have women and male characters in this novel, of course. We jump back and forth between perspectives of different characters, so it's not just Julie and Tyler or Sarah or other characters. I can't think of any names off the top of my head, but we jump between a lot of different perspectives. In the earlier part of the book, we jumped a lot between Tyler and Julie and some other like main characters, but further on we're just kind of jumping a lot. We have a lot of bad male characters. There are a lot of male characters that are just disgusting and terrible. However, we have also some female characters that are disgusting and terrible. We have some female characters that are amazing, wonderful, strong, fantastic people. And we have also specifically one male character that popped in my head, and he's the husband of somebody. I'm not going to say who, but he's also fantastic. And so it's not just depicting all men. It's not just depicting all men are terrible. It's depicting that there are some terrible people and there are some great people. And I felt really kind of happy that there was representation of everything in here. It wasn't saying all men are evil, and it wasn't saying that all women are great. It was saying that there's a mix, and that's good. We should have a mix. We shouldn't have depictions of one side or the other. It's honestly in our real world, in this real world, it's all over the place. So I'm happy that this was depicted well in this book as well. So now I think I'm done. I think I do recommend this if you like horror or if you're wanting to pick up something with horror, but do be warned there is some graphic gore pieces in this book. There are some definitely like scenes that are not for everybody. I think you'll find out within the first chapter if it's something you'd be interested in reading. I think that's in the first chapter we have like the first gory scene. So you kind of get to know if that's the correct direction for you. Because I don't read horror very often, I didn't pick this up as this kind of like genre. It's called cosmic horror. It's also connected to urban fantasy, but I thought it was interesting to kind of learn these new terms. So if you like cosmic horror, urban fantasy horror, maybe this is a good book for you. It kind of reminded me of Lovecraft in a weird way, in just like the way things were described sometimes, where it felt very like broken and uncomfortable, but also like magical, but also very weird. There were some transitions that I wasn't like super happy with how they were done, but maybe I just didn't get that transition, or maybe it just wasn't written well. I would have to reread the book to kind of see how it is. But for the most part, like I said, I would recommend if you like cosmic horror, if you like horror, if you like gore, if you like that kind of monster-filled book, then this is a book for you. If you don't, then I would not pick it up, especially if you're not somebody who can read about gore or does not like gore, then don't read it. It's just not a book for you, and that's perfectly fine. There are some books that are meant for us and some books that are not meant for us. It doesn't make it a bad book, it just makes it that you're maybe not the right audience, which is perfectly okay. That's, like I always mention, that's the great thing about art, that's the great thing about books, is they're made for different people, and different people can get different things out of it. This challenge is for me to kind of learn and pick up new genres that I would not normally pick up. And I liked this. I thought it was fun. I like I said, I'm a cozy, colorful girl, but sometimes I have my gory and horror side that I do like to bring out sometimes. I love this part about me because I got my interest in horror and B-movies from my dad. And so I do think this kind of scratched that itch. But I will be honest, this is not a book I pick up very often, and I'm not reading a horror book. Well, maybe I am, but at the moment, I'm not looking at picking up another horror book for a little time, or a little while. So that's all my non-spoilers parts of the review. So if you don't want to listen to spoilers, make sure you jump down to the chapters where I start to pick out my new bake and my new book, so you know what we're going to be doing in the month of July. So thanks so much for being here, and if you are sticking around for the spoilers, I'll be talking about spoilers in 3, 2, 1, spoilers. You know what's funny is I'm thinking about what spoilers I would talk about in this book, and I've honestly talked about a lot of the pieces I was thinking about in my non-spoiler section. So I'm trying to figure out how to talk about spoilers in this book. Let's just start at the beginning. So we have Julie, who is a bounty hunter, like I explained, and she, this is probably one part of the book where I felt very choppy and broken, is that there were times when you were getting information like quickly and you felt kind of jolted by the information. So we were taking a lift, we were taking an elevator, and we have Julie talking to her apprentice, and her apprentice wants to learn her thing, and during a big battle of this like big giant monster that's really scary and it's really gory, we end up getting a very gory time where Julie's pulling out the insides of her apprentice, and she has to keep him alive, but this is the only way to destroy the monster. And at the end, the apprentice decides that he doesn't want to be part of the magic world anymore, which is completely understandable. He pretty much almost died, and she just shoves a bunch of new organs in his body. This is where it gets really gory. And yeah. And he decides he doesn't want to be part of this world anymore. But the part I never really understood is where do these apprentices come from? Like, who assigns her apprentice? Does she just get an apprentice? Does somebody just sign up for it? How do people come involved or become involved into this world? And we have another spot where we have, and I think this will come up in the second book, and this is where I started realizing like there's like a couple breaks to the story and I was confused, and now I understand, like I think they'll come up hopefully in the next book. But like we meet a character, I forgot his name, but he owns the bookstore. His name's like, yeah, I think Billy is his name. So Billy owns a bookstore, and he's required to sell all the books in the bookstore. And we know he's made a deal with this guy because we find out later in the book who the guy is, but we don't understand like what is going on. We end up finding out that he has an addiction to gambling and he always wins, and he lost to this guy, and now he has to sell all of the books in a bookstore because this is what the guy was supposed to do, and now he gambled that to this Billy, so now he has to do it, and he's now been working in this bookshop for 50 years, and now he may have to do it for another 50 years and 50 years after that. And I have two thoughts. One, who would not want to work at a bookstore? Just like as a thought. And a magical one at that. Like, how cool. But, you know, Billy does his own things. And so there's just, like, we get pieces of a story, but there's also pieces of the story that we're missing. And I can't figure out if that's because we're getting a second book or if there's just some gaps in this story and in the plot. Like I mentioned in the non-spoiler section, I really did enjoy the relationship between Sarah and Julie. I thought that actually worked really well. I loved the slowness of how that relationship evolved. I never felt like it was too fast or fake or anything like that. Like I felt like Julie, when she was explaining feelings that she had for Sarah, were actually true feelings that she had for Sarah. I thought it was really sweet at times. I loved like the different sentences or different like descriptions or different ideas that Sarah or Julie would have for Sarah. Like for example, they spent years together and Sarah had only ever described them as friends, had only ever treated her as one. She glanced at her friend and was pinned to her seat by Sarah's gaze. The words poured out of Julie's skull, replaced instead by warmth. It's very like she gets very warm and wonderful feelings when she's around Sarah, and I really like that because like having somebody you care deeply for, it doesn't have to just be somebody you love like as a partner, but somebody that just brings a lot of warmth and peacefulness to your life. And I like that. I like that these are descriptions that are happening in this story. Like there's another one. At that, Sarah laughed and Julie's heart did a backflip at the sound. It's just like you could see the love in the descriptions that Julie uses to explain her feelings when she's around Sarah. So I really loved the romance in this book. And I'm not somebody who would normally say that. So I think they did a really great job of explaining these two characters and their growth in their relationship. I think there was also a broken part of the Sarah comes to Julie because Sarah is in a very bad and what was emotionally, I don't want to use this word because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube, emotionally unhealthy. Let's say that, but it's worse than unhealthy. And then also physically extremely unhealthy. I know this sounds stupid, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to use words that won't get me in trouble. So we have Sarah, who now runs to Julie because her husband is a very bad husband. And we learn very disgusting things about him, the misogyny, the expectations he had for her. She was pretty much being used as a trophy wife. And if she wasn't acting as a perfect trophy wife, he definitely put out his anger on her. And so we end up meeting Sarah because Sarah's run to Julie, her best friend is when they were kids, and says, Julie, I need to stay here. And Sarah ends up finally telling Julie why. And they hadn't seen each other in years, but it doesn't mean that their relationship broke or has changed. It's still the relationship they had. And Julie doesn't hold any hard feelings about the past. It's what happened. And I really liked that because honestly, it's what happens sometimes. It's unfortunate, but it happens. And so we have Sarah going to Julie, and I think the husband's name is Dan. So the husband of Sarah, I think his name is Dan. Let's use Dan. So Dan is terrible, and I'm like expecting a lot to happen with Dan. And then Dan gets there. Dan's terrible. Dan says, bah, give Sarah back to me. And then Dan shoots Julie, kills somebody else, has a little bit of a high, then starts freaking out, and then gets possessed by an angel worm demon. Dan didn't get very much of a storyline, which, I mean, I'm happy because Dan was terrible, but it felt like too quick for me at one point. And then Julie is like dying, but then she gets medicine from her landlord, and she's getting better, and she now has to go out and find this like angel thing that she brought out, which, sorry, I jumped way too forward. My camera was dying, so I just plugged it in, and now I have no idea where I was at. I know I was talking about Dan, how Dan didn't have very much of a story. But that was the main point. So we have Dan not have much of a story. We have, Tyler and Julie's relationship. So we find out that Tyler and Julie once were a thing. Tyler broke up with Julie because he wanted to grow in his company. He's power hungry. And now this is where like all of the badness starts coming from. Oh, right. Dan gets possessed by Julie's demon thing that she brought into the world. Because Tyler and Julie were having like a back and forth, like angry ex-lover who could be the strongest person. It was a stupid little situation. They consistently have a situation like this. They don't get along. But Julie needs money, so she always goes to Tyler because Tyler has jobs and Tyler doesn't have the guts to go out and do the jobs that Julie's willing to do, but his company like requires him to do it, but he just like hires her as a bounty hunter to go do it for him, and she needs money, so yeah. And every time Julie does something like this for him, he takes the credit because he needs the credit for his job, which I think is stupid. But we also understand, like, in the gist, she's hired to go just do stuff for him. And she's putting herself in a situation like this, but she also has a bad name because Tyler's been causing her to have this bad name. Like, nobody trusts her. So we constantly hear, like, their relationship is terrible. And at one point, Julie, like, does something that just makes him super angry, makes Tyler super angry. And so what Tyler does is he's like, oh, you need a guardian angel. And this, like, puts a little tiny, like, little drop in her brain, a little seed where now Julie needs to go pick up a book that, where she can summon a angel to help her through her situations. And this is probably one of the parts of the book where I'm like, wait, what? Because I felt like this was kind of like a weak reason of why that all happened, but maybe Julia is not as, how would I say this? Not as thought out. Not in the sense that as a character thought out, but it like she is a little like one note almost. or too quick to action sometimes, which we kind of get that as a character thing for her. But so she goes to the bookstore and buys a book, and she brings an angel into the world. But then we find out that Tyler actually planted that book into this bookstore, which is the bookstore that Billy owns, and that now she's bought this book, and now she's bringing the angel, which she thinks is an angel, through the book into her world. But why don't we learn any what would be backfires or consequences or possible consequences for bringing this angel into the world? So she doesn't even read these consequences, so we don't get to learn about the consequences. And if it was an angel, there has to be some consequences. There has to be some consequences for this magic stuff. And instead of being an angel, she ends up bringing a monster, a demon into the world, an eater or whatever it's called. It's it's full of worms. I'm not going to use the word that they're actually made out of, because that's actually a word that really grosses me out. But it's like a parasite, and she brings this parasite into the world thinking it's an angel, but then she finds out it's a parasite, and then that parasite is ready to just mow through a lot of things and kill a lot of people. And it's trying to get to Tyler's company, because Tyler's company houses the mother or a big monster that lays eggs. And that's another part of the story. So I do have to admit, there's a lot of little pieces that were just a lot all over the place. It's not terrible. It's just at some points I was wait, what's happening? Where are we? Where are we in this story? So I think some parts of it were really good. But the main fight scenes in certain areas, I was just kind of disappointed in. When Tyler and the lady that Tyler's working with, the security lady, and they're in the big white room, and Tyler kills the main monster dude of the company by just having it eat the security lady. And it's supposed to be a giant monster that's hard to kill, and it's intimidating and scary. But Tyler is also stupid through the entire book. So why is Tyler all of a sudden having this brilliant idea when he's slow and not getting anything most of the book? So that's one thing. And then at the very end, the last 50 pages, this is probably where the most spoilers come in, because this is probably where I get most frustrated. And these are the 50 pages that I said I just felt short. I understand that this is going to be a second book. But when we have major fight scenes, I hate when the side fight scenes, the monster fight scenes, are more intense and more crazy. The fight scene that we had with the apprentice at the very beginning of the book was more intense than the fight scene at the very end of the book with the major monster parasite thing. So we find out that Julie just has to kill herself to be able to get rid of the parasite monster, and so Sarah starts coming up with a plan, but I never understood what Sarah's plan was. And then I think she was trying to sacrifice herself, but it wasn't clear to me. I didn't understand it. But Julie has a epiphany of everything that happens when they see Sarah and the parasite monster together, and she's oh my God, Sarah had this all planned out. And I was thinking, wait, what? I didn't give this. And then so Julie ends up getting rid of herself. And then Sarah brings her back with the monkey foot that we learned about earlier on. That was definitely a plan. I mean, we all knew that something was going to happen with the monkey foot at the very beginning of the book, where Sarah wants to see inside of Julie's magic cupboard. And Sarah pulls out the monkey foot, and she's oh, what's this? And or the monkey paw, and Julie's oh, 2 of the wishes have been used. I've been saving the last one for very specific things, but the wishes are tricks. It's every genie book or movie or story we ever hear. If you make a wish, of course there's going to be consequences, if you're not as specific, and so on and so forth. So at the very end, Sarah uses the monkey's foot to wish Julie back to life, and so Julie comes back to life. So we know there's going to be consequences. But that fight scene with the parasite monster's been going around killing a bunch of people. And then all of a sudden, he's just gone. And the mother at the Tyler's company is gone. And there's a lot of things happening. But Tyler also brought a new parasite into the world. And there's just, I think I had a lot more open questions And it's funny because talking to you, I have even more open questions. So this is why I love talking about books, is because they make you start thinking about all these other things that you never actually really thought about. I still like this book. I found it entertaining. I'm excited to read the second one whenever it comes out. Unfortunately, it's not planned. And so now I'm worried that I'm just going to forget about it and not read it. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was entertaining. I loved the fact that it brought me into a horror genre that I don't read very much of, but I still enjoyed very much of. I think it's fun and fascinating, and it was good. So I still recommend it, even though there was a lot of plot holes and a lot of confusion and a lot of weirdness. But I want you to read it. Well, hopefully you've read it because you just listened to spoilers, but maybe they didn't make sense. So hopefully you read it and you could tell me what your thoughts are about it. So yeah. I know my spoiler section was kind of messy, but honestly, this book was messy. Like, I don't even know where to start with it. I think the parts of this book, the parts that stuck out to me the most, and the ones I marked on here, are the pink sections that are the gore or the misogyny, and the yellow sections, which is like the love story between Sarah and Julie. I do have a couple like tabs in here that are like lines I thought were really pretty or really well done. For example, this is a part with Dan and Sarah. So his name is Dan. When he wasn't screaming at her for wanting to be more than decorative, she recalls friends who sighed in envy over her situation, who said to her face how much they wanted to be like her, loved without exception, prized beyond reason. Sarah had smiled when they said that, even though what she really wanted to do was scream. A trapped bird was still trapped, no matter how pretty it's caged. And I love that last line. A trapped bird was still trapped, no matter how pretty it's caged. This line was so impactful, and I'm not really sure why. And I think it's the idea of like, especially now, and especially with how I think our world is turning back into this like specific idea of what beauty is, people who hit this beauty standard aren't necessarily happy, and they're still trying to get to that specific beauty standard. So and I think it just resonated with me about like, especially with how the world is kind of evolving right now and what's changing and what's considered beautiful, and it was just really interesting. And so I still recommend it. Still think it's a fun read if you like horror, cosmic horror, and any of that kind of gory horror stuff. So I like it. You should read it so you can talk to me about it. If you've read it, let me know, because I want to talk to somebody about it, because I love talking to people about books, and I can't find people who've read this book. So yeah. It's getting late. As you can tell, it's getting a little dark. I did my video a little bit later tonight because it is very, very warm. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my new bake and my new book for July. And I'm going to do my bake first because I love doing my bakes first. So like always, Melissa Forti's baking book. And I think I'm going to go a little bit further in the front this time. I'm probably going to jinx myself because I had mentioned that my recipes seem to fit with the seasons so well, and now I'm going to open it and it's going to be some kind of Christmas treat. Oh, not a Christmas treat, but it's almond brittle. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Italian name, but it's a very easy recipe. What Melissa Forti says on her little blurb side, it says, this doesn't involve baking as such, but is so yummy I had to include it in the book. I would call it a treat, or a sin actually, due to the amount of sugar in it. Its origins are not very clear. Some say it is invented by the Spanish during the second half of the 15th century. Others credit to the Italians, but one thing is sure, the famous Italian writer and gastronomist Pellegrino Artusia decided to include the recipe in the great book. I was going to try to read the Italian part of it, but I'm not going to read that. But in parentheses underneath it, it says, Science in the Kitchen and the Art of Eating Well, which was published in the 1800s. I had the best almond brittle while in one of my favorite restaurants, Ottona Prima in Sarzana. They make an amazing thin and crispy almond brittle. It is to them that I dedicate my version, with a glass of fine dessert wine that makes the perfect ending to a good meal. And your friends will agree, stored in an airtight container, it will be kept for a very long time. I'm thrilled because it's been too hot to have an oven on, so I think this actually fits perfectly for the season. So we'll be making almond brittle this next month for July, and we have 6 more books out of our stack. The question is what are we feeling? And I'm feeling actually a thin book this month because we're going to be going to Berlin and we have a couple other trips planned for July, so I'm a little worried I won't have a lot of time to read. So I think I'm going to do this thin book right here. This one's also a thin one. But I think my heart's putting towards this one. I'm a little nervous. Okay, so I have the back of the book. I don't know what it is, so I still can't see what it is. Ready? Oh my, okay. I like how I thought I would pick an easier book, and I don't think this is going to be an easier book. So this is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. A bold new translation of Hesse's most beloved work. Hesse's famous and influential novel, Siddhartha, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, do not judge me please, is perhaps the most important and compelling moral allegory our troubled century has produced, integrating Eastern and Western spiritual traditions with psychoanalysis and philosophy. This strangely simple tale, written with a deep and moving empathy for humanity, has touched the lives of millions since its original publication in 1922. Set in India, Siddhartha is a story of a young Brahmin's search for ultimate reality over meeting with a Buddha. This one's going to be a heavy one. So it's good that I have a really easy bake, like this beautiful almond brittle. And now I have a really heavy book, which was really funny because I was like, oh, I'm going to choose one that's going to maybe be a little bit lighter. And we have this one. But you know what? Hey, I'm trying to look for the other recipe while I'm talking to you. So I'm sorry I'm looking away. So these are our 2 things we're going to be doing. We have a very intense book and a very beautiful, easy brittle. I'm really excited. I think these are going to be great, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the month of July goes. It's going to be quite interesting and fascinating, I think, but I'm excited. So, thank you so much for joining me on this very funny and weird challenge. I really enjoyed this month. I think The Dead Take the A Train by Cassandra Khaw and Richard Kadrey was brilliant and fun, and I really did enjoy this cake. I thought it was absolutely perfect, and I'm so happy it ended up being my birthday cake as well. So thank you so much for joining me. If you guys did like this video, make sure you do give it a like. If you want to continue watching this series, make sure you subscribe. I try to put out the next video, or I've been successful. I haven't tried. I've been successful at putting out this video the first of every month that the video is taking place. So for example, this video will be out on July 1st for you to watch, which is the June video. And then July's video will be out on August 1st. So it always is the first of the month of the last month's video. So I hope you guys subscribe so you can hang out with me and continue this fun little journey of reading and baking some new and wonderful recipes, and also reading some new genres and new books. So thank you again, and I really appreciate you guys. It's late now, it's dark, I think it's 9 o'clock, but I still just wanted to say thank you so much. So I'll leave you guys there, but I hope you have a fantastic day, a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao!